The cafe was quiet, but inside, Isabel's heart raced as the weight of a choice she never expected began to settle in. The cafe, nestled on a quiet corner of the city, was known for its charm, not because it was new or luxurious, but because it had history. The smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, mixing with the scent of buttery croissants and the faint lingering fragrance of old books from the bookshelf in the corner. For many, this was a refuge, a quiet retreat from the world outside. For Isabel Foster, it was just another day of survival. Isabel wiped down the counter, her movements almost automatic as she kept her eyes focused on the task in front of her. The cafe was busy, as it usually was in the mornings, with customers sipping their drinks in a quiet, solitary bubble. To the patrons, Isabel was just another waitress, an invisible part of the background. But to Isabel, each coffee order, each polite smile was a brief escape from the heavier thoughts that plagued her. Thoughts of her brother Lucas, his constant need for care, and the ever-growing pile of unpaid bills. At 26, Isabel felt as though she was living in a world where time moved on, without her each day slipping by unnoticed, just another chain in the quiet, unremarkable rhythm of her life. Her dreams, if she ever had them, had long been abandoned in the dust of responsibilities. Lucas had been blind since he was 5, and she had never known a life without being his caretaker. From school runs to doctor's visits, late-night study sessions, to early morning piano practice, her world revolved around him. Life was simple, if not exactly joyful. It was steady, predictable, and for the most part, that was how Isabel liked it. The world could be a cruel place, especially for someone like her, who wasn't rich, wasn't powerful, and didn't have the luxury of choices. All she had was a job at Café Lumière, which didn't pay much but kept the lights on, and a brother who needed her more than anything. Isabel turned her attention to the door as it opened, letting in a burst of cold air. A woman entered, tall and composed, with an air of self-assurance that immediately made her stand out. Isabel had seen her before, a familiar face from the pages of business magazines. Sophia Harrington, the CEO of Harrington Technologies, a name synonymous with power, wealth, and perfection. She entered the cafe with the same detached elegance that marked her every step. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, and for a moment her gaze flickered to Isabel, as if measuring her. Sophia's daughter Lily followed her in, holding her mother's hand. The girl, no older than 10, was dressed in a perfectly tailored coat, her posture unnervingly stiff for a child of her age. Isabel noticed the way she moved carefully with an air of unease. And then there was the unmistakable sign, the dark sunglasses Lily wore despite the soft sunlight streaming through the window. It didn't take long for Isabel to realize Lily was blind. Sophia guided Lily to a corner table, her own air of discomfort masked by the careful perfection with which she arranged her daughter's things. She set down a napkin, placed a glass of water, but never once did she touch her daughter in an affectionate way. It was the kind of thing Isabel had seen countless times before: wealthy parents who seemed to think that their presence alone was enough. The kind of parents who had forgotten what it meant to actually see their children. Isabel felt a pang of sympathy as she watched Lily sit down at the table. The girl reached out with delicate hands, searching the surface in vain for the braille menu that should have been there. Isabel's heart tightened. She knew that feeling all too well, the quiet frustration of trying to make sense of a world that didn't see you. As Isabel watched, she noticed the small tremor in Lily's hands. It wasn't a tremor born of cold or fear. It was the kind that comes from years of practice, the kind that comes from trying to control what cannot be controlled. Lily was blind, yes, but she was also alone in that moment. Alone in a world full of people who were too busy to notice her. The air felt heavier as Isabel observed the scene. There was a growing sense of unease in the cafe, a quiet hum that seemed to pulse with the unspoken tension. And then it happened. The moment that would change everything. Lily's voice, soft and trembling, broke the silence. "Mommy, come back soon. Mommy, come back soon." The words floated across the room, carrying with them a weight Isabel had never experienced before. It was the voice of a child in need, desperate, fragile, and afraid. Isabel's heart lurched in her chest, and before she even realized what she was doing, her feet were moving. She crossed the floor quickly, her shoes tapping softly against the hardwood as she made her way to the girls' table. The customers around her didn't notice, no one ever did, but Isabel's mind was focused solely on Lily. The rest of the world faded away. She knelt down beside the girl, who froze at the sound of her approach. Isabel offered a gentle smile, one she hoped would reassure her. Hello, I'm Isabel, she said softly. Can I help you with something while you wait for your mom? Lily looked up, her sunglasses masking her eyes, but Isabel could see the hesitation in her small frame. Where's my mom? The girl asked, her voice a mixture of confusion and sadness. She's not back yet, Isabel replied gently. I'm a waitress here. Can I help you clean up the mess? Lily's shoulders slumped as if the weight of her worries had caught up with her. I knocked the flowers over, she said, her voice quivering slightly. Mom's gonna be mad. Isabel smiled, a soft, reassuring gesture. Accidents happen, she said, her tone calm. Don't worry, it's not a big deal. Lily looked up, at her eyes shadowed by the sunglasses, but there was something in the girl's voice that Isabel couldn't ignore. The vulnerability. The desire to be seen not just as a blind girl, but as a person. For the next few minutes, Isabel stayed with Lily, helping her clean up the mess and offering her a cup of hot chocolate while they waited for her mother. As Isabel sat beside her, she noticed the sharp contrast between Lily and her mother. Sophia Harrington sat at the other end of the cafe, her eyes scanning the room with an air of indifference, never once glancing at her daughter. It was as if Lily were invisible to her, but not to Isabel. Isabel sat with Lily for the next few moments, speaking to her, softly making her feel seen. They talked about books, about stars, about music. Isabel saw in Lily something she recognized, a longing for connection, for understanding. And in that moment, Isabel made a promise to herself. She wouldn't just be a waitress anymore. She wouldn't just live the life of a passive observer. She would be someone who saw people the way they truly were, not just as customers or strangers or problems to solve. She would be someone who saw beyond the surface. And maybe, just maybe, she would be someone who could make a difference in Lily's life. The days following that moment in Café Lumière seemed to stretch on endlessly for Isabel. She had tried to push the memory of Lily out of her mind, but the girl's innocent face, the way her hands trembled as she reached out for the Braille menu that wasn't there, and the soft, unspoken plea for her mother to return, it all lingered, haunting her thoughts at night. Sophia Harrington's behavior that afternoon had been equally confusing. The cold, almost dismissive way she treated Lily, the way she seemed to take her daughter's presence for granted, left Isabel unsettled. But then again, what did she know about a woman like Sophia? She was a CEO, a power player in the world of technology, someone who lived in a completely different realm. The only thing Isabel could be sure of was the certainty in Sophia's eyes when she'd walked into the cafe. The next few weeks passed in a blur for Isabel, her routine at the cafe carrying on as normal. But something changed. There was a quiet, unsettling tension that weighed on her every time she set foot in the cafe. It was as though every corner of the room, every customer, every table was waiting for something, though Isabel couldn't pinpoint what. That something came one Thursday afternoon. Sophia Harrington reappeared in Café Lumière, but this time she wasn't alone. Margaret Chun, Sophia's legal assistant, followed closely behind her, holding a briefcase in one hand, a folder in the other. Lily trailed behind them, her usual sense of distance even more pronounced. The girl walked with purpose, though Isabel could sense that something was different. Lily's usual quiet unease seemed to have shifted, replaced by a deeper, almost palpable sadness. The moment Sophia walked through the door, the entire cafe seemed to hold its breath. Customers stiffened, their conversations stalling as though they were all waiting for the queen to enter her throne room. Isabel had learned to avoid eye contact with customers like Sophia. The energy these people brought into the room was never something she could absorb easily. But today there was something different, something in the way Sophia's eyes briefly flicked toward her, a slight, almost imperceptible signal that Isabel had caught her attention. Sophia moved toward the counter, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her eyes scanned the room with cold precision before finally settling on Isabel. She didn't smile. She didn't acknowledge the normal pleasantries one might expect. Instead, her gaze was direct, unyielding. Isabel, Sophia's voice was measured, controlled. A word. Isabel's stomach dropped. There was something about the way Sophia said her name, something that made her feel like she was about to be tested. Isabel nodded, her hands going still, the tray she was carrying suddenly feeling like an anchor. She glanced around the cafe, wondering if anyone else was watching this. Did anyone else feel the weight of this moment? Sophia and Margaret followed her to a back corner of the cafe, where they sat at a small table. Isabel, though nervous, tried to keep her composure. The tension between them was almost physical, a tug-of-war between the small working-class waitress and the towering, imposing figure of a woman who controlled billions. "I'm sure you're wondering why I've asked for this meeting." Sophia began folding her hands neatly on the table. Her voice had lost none of its sharpness, but there was something more personal in her tone now, something that caught Isabel off guard. Isabel remained silent, waiting. She wasn't sure what to say, but she was done pretending that she didn't know what was going on. She had a sinking suspicion that this meeting had everything to do with Lily, and perhaps everything to do with the moments she'd shared with her. Sophia continued, her eyes never leaving Isabel's face. "I want to discuss what happened between you and my daughter the other day. You didn't just serve her, you connected with her. You treated her like a person, Isabel, not a problem to be solved." Isabel felt the heat rise in her cheeks. I, I just spoke to her. It wasn't anything special." Sophia's lips curled into a thin smile. "You're mistaken. It was something very special. You see, people like you, people from your background, don't often see my daughter. They don't look at her with kindness. They look at her with pity. You, however, saw her for who she truly is." Isabel's throat tightened and she swallowed hard. The words were sharp, cutting straight to the heart of everything she had felt in that moment with Lily. The way she had seen her not as a blind girl, but as a curious, intelligent child who deserved to be treated with respect. "Lily needs more than just someone who serves her food or cleans up after her." Sophia continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "She needs someone who understands her, someone who sees past the blindness and reaches her heart. And I believe you're the one to do that." Isabel blinked in disbelief. "And you're asking me to what? To be her companion?" Sophia's eyes softened ever so slightly, the sharp edges of her usual demeanor dulling just enough for Isabel to catch a glimpse of something vulnerable beneath the surface. "Yes," she said. "I'm offering you a position, a paid one. You would assist my daughter, guide her, be there when I can't. You would be compensated for your time and the money, Isabel." Sophia paused, her voice turning ice cold. "The money will be more than anything you've ever earned working in this cafe." Isabel recoiled slightly, the words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Money was tempting, yes, but it wasn't the problem here. She wasn't someone who could be bought. It was never about money. It was about the way Sophia was using her daughter to test people, to manipulate them into doing her bidding. "Why me?" Isabel finally asked, her voice steadier than she expected. "There are plenty of others who could do what you're asking." Sophia tilted her head slightly, her gaze sharpening. "Because you're authentic, Isabel. You saw Lily. And more importantly, you didn't try to pretend that she wasn't in need. You didn't patronize her or look down on her. You treated her like a human being. Not a charity case, not an inconvenience. And I admire that." Isabel felt a flush of anger rise within her, a deep, burning sense of injustice. "You're using her," she said, her voice low but firm. "You're using your own daughter as a test for people. It's not right." Sophia's face remained impassive, but there was a flicker of something else, something that made Isabel hesitate. Sophia might have been cold, calculating, and relentless, but Isabel knew that even the most powerful people had their weaknesses. "I'm offering you an opportunity, Isabel," Sophia said quietly. "Don't turn it down." The offer was left hanging in the air like a challenge thrown across the table. Isabel was torn, caught between the promise of a better life and the moral dilemma that gnawed at her every thought. How could she possibly accept this? How could she work for a woman who viewed her own daughter as a means to an end? But as the conversation ended and Sophia left the cafe, Isabel was left to stew in the gravity of what had just transpired. She wasn't sure what to make of it all, but one thing was certain: she had just been offered a chance, an opportunity that might change everything. However, Isabel knew that there was a darker side to all of this. Sophia Harrington wasn't offering her a job out of kindness. She had an agenda, a reason for wanting Isabel by her side. And whatever that reason was, Isabel wasn't about to let herself be manipulated. The ball was in her court, but for the first time in her life, Isabel wasn't sure what her next move would be. This portion of the story sets up critical conflicts and reveals key themes in the narrative. We see the clash between Sophia's controlling, manipulative nature and Isabel's authenticity and moral compass. It also sets up the emotional tension surrounding Lily and the role Isabel will play in her life moving forward. The next step will be a deeper exploration of Isabel's choices, which will eventually lead to the climax. After the meeting with Sophia Harrington, Isabel spent sleepless nights turning over the offer in her mind. The money was unimaginable, far more than she'd ever earned in her life, enough to give Lucas the opportunity to attend the prestigious Wellington Academy, and for her to leave the suffocating confines of Café Lumiere. It was a dream, a dangerous dream perhaps, but it was too tempting to ignore. But as the days passed, the shadows of doubt crept in. There was a part of Isabel that screamed against it. Sophia Harrington wasn't just offering her a job. She was offering a place in her world, a world of manipulation, control, and cold ambition. Isabel had seen it in Sophia's eyes, the calculated indifference, the way she used Lily like a pawn in her game. And yet Isabel knew that Lily needed someone who would protect her from the emotional neglect of a mother who saw only the image of perfection and not the child in need. It took 3 days before Isabel finally made up her mind. She would do it not just for the money, not just for Lucas, but because she couldn't stand to watch Lily continue to wither in the background of her mother's empire. On the fourth day, she called Sophia's assistant and agreed to meet at Harrington Technologies. The moment the call ended, Isabel felt a surge of nervous energy rush through her. She was stepping into a world she didn't belong to, a world where people didn't get second chances, where power was everything, and where emotions were considered weaknesses. Harrington Technologies was more than just a company. It was a fortress. The building loomed over the city like a testament to Sophia Harrington's dominance. Its sleek, modern architecture seemed to erase any sense of warmth or humanity from the surroundings. It was cold, impersonal, and intimidating, the perfect reflection of its owner. As Isabel crossed the threshold of the lobby, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being swallowed by something much bigger than herself. Margaret, Sophia's assistant, greeted her with a practiced smile, and after a brief exchange of pleasantries, she led Isabel to the elevator. The ride to the 45th floor was a silent one. Isabel's heart raced in her chest, the weight of her decision pressing down on her shoulders. She knew she was about to enter a world she could never have imagined for herself, and she didn't know whether it would be her salvation or her undoing. The elevator doors opened to reveal a spacious minimalist office, everything in perfect order. The walls were adorned with abstract art, and the polished marble floors reflected the harsh fluorescent lights above. Sophia Harrington stood by the window, her back to Isabel, as she gazed out over the city. The power emanating from her was palpable, as if the very air in the room had been shaped by her will. Isabel, Sophia said, her voice smooth, but laced with a certain chill. "I'm glad you've come." Isabel stood at the door, unsure of whether she should sit or wait for permission. Sophia turned to face her, her gaze cool, appraising. "You've made the right decision," Sophia continued, stepping forward. "This opportunity will change everything for you." Isabel nodded, though doubt lingered in her mind. She had expected power in Sophia's presence, but it was more than that. There was an aura of absolute control, something that made Isabel feel like she was standing at the edge of a precipice. Sophia motioned for Isabel to sit. "I won't pretend that this is an easy decision for you. I know you've lived your life outside the spotlight, but here you will learn how to wield power, not in the way I do necessarily, but in a way that's necessary for survival." Isabel swallowed hard. She wasn't sure what Sophia was asking of her, what kind of game she was about to enter, but it was too late to turn back now. "You'll work closely with Lily," Sophia said, her eyes narrowing. "She needs someone who can guide her, not just emotionally, but in the world I've built. I trust you'll be able to teach her the things she needs to learn, Isabel. The things I can't teach her." The weight of the words settled in Isabel's chest. Lily wasn't just a child who needed emotional care. She was a pawn in a larger game. She could feel the shifting power dynamics already. Sophia was trying to position Isabel as both a caretaker and a tool in her own ambitious designs. "I'll do what I can for her," Isabel said, her voice steady, though she knew it was more than that. She wasn't just there to protect Lily from Sophia's emotional coldness. She was also there to fight for her humanity, her right to choose her own path. Sophia smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a woman who had found an ally. It was the smile of someone who believed they had already won. "Good," she said. "You start tomorrow." The next few days at Harrington Technologies were a blur of meetings, papers, and introductions to the labyrinthine world Sophia had built around herself. Isabel quickly realized that the world Sophia operated in was not like anything she had encountered before. There were no real friends here, only allies and adversaries, each of them playing their part in a carefully orchestrated dance of power. There were whispers in the hallways, hushed conversations in elevators, and the constant hum of competition. Isabel's role was clear, though, to keep Lily's emotional state in check, to guide her as she navigated the suffocating world of power and expectations that Sophia had created. She was supposed to be the safe space for Lily, a contrast to Sophia's cold, calculated presence. But the more Isabel learned about the inner workings of Harrington Technologies, the more she began to feel trapped. The manipulation, the secrecy, the endless strings that Sophia pulled. Isabel had never imagined the extent to which the Harrington Empire operated. Every moment, every action felt like part of a larger unspoken game. And yet, despite the discomfort, she felt she couldn't turn her back on Lily. There was a part of Lily that still fought to be seen for who she truly was, not just as the daughter of a powerful woman. Isabel could see it in the way the girl spoke, her longing for something more than the gilded cage her mother had put her in. But there were also moments of hesitation when Lily seemed to withdraw into herself, unsure of whether she was allowed to have desires, dreams, or opinions outside of her mother's control. One afternoon, as they sat together in one of the quiet corners of Harrington Technologies, Lily spoke in a voice too quiet for anyone else to hear. "Do you think my mom really loves me?" "Isabel," she asked, her eyes fixed on her hands, which were nervously tracing patterns on the table. Isabel's heart sank. She wasn't sure how to answer that question, not in the way Lily needed. But she knew that this was the pivotal moment. This was when Lily would either become a pawn in her mother's world or find the strength to break free. Isabel couldn't answer for Sophia, but she could give Lily something else: honesty. "I think your mom loves you the best way she knows how," Isabel said softly. "But love isn't always enough to understand someone else. And sometimes it's up to us to teach the people we love how to really see us." Lily looked up at Isabel, her expression softening, a small glimmer of understanding in her eyes. "I want to be seen," she whispered. "I don't want to be a project." In that moment, Isabel knew that this was why she had entered this world in the first place, not just for the money or the opportunity, but because Lily needed someone who would see her, truly see her, and help her find her voice. It had been weeks since Isabel had stepped into the world of Harrington Technologies, and the reality of her new life had started to settle in like a heavy fog. Each day she walked the tightrope between her role as Lily's emotional guide and the relentless cold world of power and manipulation that Sophia Harrington had built around her. Isabel had initially believed that her job was simple: take care of Lily, keep her out of the public eye, protect her from the emotional coldness of her mother. But what she hadn't expected was how deeply tangled she would become in the web of Sophia's influence. Sophia, ever the perfect puppet master, seemed to orchestrate everything with meticulous precision. From the very first day Isabel began working for Lily, she understood that she was not merely being hired to provide company for a lonely child. No, she was being used to maintain the illusion of a perfect family. Sophia had created a gilded cage for Lily, and Isabel's presence was the final touch, making sure the girl remained a compliant part of her mother's empire. At first, Isabel fought against the constraints of her new role. She tried to offer Lily small pieces of freedom, moments of individuality, and the chance to develop her own thoughts and opinions. But the more time Isabel spent with the girl, the more she began to realize how much of Lily's life had been shaped by Sophia's need for control. The girl was living in a world designed to stifle her growth. But there was more to it than that. Isabel could feel it, the undercurrent of something darker, something hidden beneath the surface. And then there was the troubling revelation: the accident that had blinded Lily 5 years ago wasn't just an accident. The more Isabel investigated, the more she discovered a pattern of manipulation, secrecy, and the lengths to which Sophia had gone to hide the truth. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, but each discovery made Isabel's world feel more precarious. Isabel knew she had to dig deeper. She wasn't one to back down from the truth, no matter how painful. It started with small things: discrepancies in the public records surrounding the accident, subtle clues in the way Sophia spoke about it. Isabel began to ask questions that Sophia was careful not to answer. One night while Lily was asleep in her room, Isabel went through the family's archives. She had already known that Sophia had a reputation for controlling everything around her, but she had no idea how far Sophia's manipulations went until she uncovered the damning documents. Isabel found a file labeled "Confidential" tucked away in the back of a drawer in Sophia's private office. Inside were old photographs of Sophia and Lily before the accident, smiling together in what appeared to be a carefree moment. But there was more: a police report from the accident, an official document that had been sealed. It was strange, almost impossible to ignore. Sophia had gone to great lengths to suppress the truth about what had happened. The report showed that Sophia had been driving the car when it collided with another vehicle, resulting in Lily's blindness. But there were discrepancies in the details, things that didn't add up. The other driver had claimed that Sophia had been texting while driving, but the police report had been mysteriously altered with key information redacted. Isabel's heart pounded as she went through the documents. The cover-up was too clean, too calculated. Sophia had used her power, her wealth, to make sure this would never see the light of day. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a deliberate effort to erase the truth. As Isabel dug further into the past, she found more unsettling truths. She came across an email that had been sent from Trevor Harrington, Sophia's estranged brother, to her. The email was dated a week after the accident, and it confirmed Isabel's worst suspicions. Sophia had deliberately kept Lily from receiving treatment that could have partially restored her sight. The email read, "Vic, I've arranged everything as we discussed. The settlement with the other driver has been finalized and the legal team has successfully sealed the records. No one will ever know. As for Lily, I've instructed the doctors to avoid any experimental treatments that could give her back her sight. It's too risky. We can't afford the scandal." The words stung like a slap in the face. Sophia had known all along. She had known that Lily could have regained at least partial sight, but she had chosen to keep her daughter in the dark, both literally and figuratively. The more Isabel uncovered, the more disgusted she became with the woman who had once seemed so untouchable. Sophia's need for control had caused Lily's blindness, and Isabel realized that she was not just fighting for Lily's emotional well-being, she was fighting for her physical future as well. One evening, after spending hours digging through more documents, Isabel finally confronted Sophia. The tension had been building for days, and Isabel could no longer remain silent. Sophia had been ignoring her, distancing herself from their interactions. But Isabel knew that now was the time to confront her, to demand the truth. They met in the large conference room in Harrington Technologies. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. Sophia sat at the head of the long, polished table, her posture rigid and perfect. Isabel stood in front of her, the evidence in her hands, her heart racing as she finally found the courage to speak the words that had been weighing on her. "You lied to me, Sophia," Isabel said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You lied about the accident. You lied about Lily's treatment. You kept her in the dark, not just physically, but emotionally. You kept her from having a chance at a normal life." Sophia's eyes flashed with anger, but there was a flicker of something deeper beneath the surface, something that almost resembled fear. She looked away, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. "Isabel, you don't understand," Sophia said, her voice strained. "Everything I've done for Lily. You think I don't care about her. You think I don't love her." Isabel shook her head. "It's not about love, Sophia. It's about control. You've treated Lily like an object, like something to be perfected. You've used her to protect your image, to hide your mistakes. She's not a tool for your empire. She's a person." For a long moment the room was silent. Sophia's face was unreadable, but her eyes betrayed her the slightest crack in her otherwise flawless mask. Lily was no longer just the daughter of a powerful CEO. She was a child who had been trapped in a gilded cage, and Isabel was the only one who saw her for who she truly was. "I didn't want this for her," Sophia said quietly, almost to herself. "But I didn't know how else to protect her. I thought keeping her safe, keeping her perfect. I thought that was the only way." Isabel's heart softened, but she didn't relent. "Your love is suffocating her. You've kept her in the shadows, Sophia. You've kept her from seeing the truth, from seeing the world. She deserves better than this." The tears that welled up in Sophia's eyes surprised Isabel. For the first time, she saw the weight of the woman who had once seemed invincible. The powerful CEO, the cold manipulator, was finally cracking. "Then help me," Sophia whispered. "Help me make it right." In the days that followed, Isabel became more determined than ever to help Lily. She knew the truth now and she couldn't turn back. Sophia had agreed to allow Lily to undergo the experimental treatments that could partially restore her sight. But there was more to the decision than just medical procedures. Isabel knew that for Lily to truly heal, she needed to be free not just physically, but emotionally. Isabel's own heart was torn. She had entered Sophia's world expecting power, wealth, and opportunity, but what she found was something darker, more insidious than she could have ever imagined. And now as she stood at the crossroads of this new reality, she had to make a choice. Would she continue to fight for Lily, knowing the price she would have to pay? Would she take on the mantle of helping the young girl heal, even as Sophia tried to reclaim control? The weeks that followed the confrontation with Sophia Harrington were filled with intense internal conflict. Isabel had in many ways made her choice. Her role as Lily's protector had become more than just a job, it had become a personal mission. And while she had once thought she was stepping into a world of riches and opportunity, she now realized that the true reward was the freedom she could help Lily reclaim. But Sophia was not the kind of woman to let go of control easily. The night after their confrontation, Sophia sent Isabel a message that would change everything. It was short, direct, and undeniably threatening. "You have no idea what you've started." Isabel stared at the message, the words burning into her mind. There was no going back now. She had crossed the line between simply being a caretaker and challenging the very foundation of Sophia's empire. Sophia had always been in control of everything, but now Isabel realized Sophia was losing that control, and so was everything she had built. In the days that followed, Isabel knew the truth. The only way to truly help Lily was to break the chains that Sophia had placed around her. Sophia had built her empire by controlling not only the world around her, but also the people in it. Isabel wasn't just fighting for Lily's freedom anymore. She was fighting for her own ability to exist outside the shadow of Sophia's influence. But Sophia had one final card to play. It happened at an event, a gala thrown in honor of Harrington Technologies' latest merger. Isabel had been invited, though she was more of a token figure at this point, still seen as an outsider by the rest of Sophia's inner circle. Lily was there as always by Sophia's side, but there was a marked distance between them. Sophia's tight, controlled smile never quite reached her eyes, and Lily seemed lost in the noise of the glittering event, her fingers fidgeting nervously at her side. Isabel hadn't wanted to go, hadn't wanted to be part of this spectacle of wealth and perfection, but she had agreed, knowing that if she was going to make any real change in Lily's life, she would have to confront Sophia in the heart of her world. The moment Sophia saw Isabel across the room, her eyes narrowed with something that felt dangerously close to hatred. She wasn't used to being challenged, and it was clear that Isabel had rattled her more than she had let on. For the first time, Isabel felt a shift in the power dynamics between them. Sophia wasn't just the powerful CEO anymore. She was someone who had something to lose, and that made her desperate. In the middle of the gala, Sophia walked toward Isabel with a deliberate predatory grace. Her smile was cold, calculated, and Isabel could see the tightening of her jaw. "I see you've decided to attend after all," Sophia said, her voice laced with mock sweetness. "I trust you've enjoyed the show." Isabel stood her ground, feeling the weight of Sophia's words, but she didn't flinch. "I'm not here for the spectacle," she replied, her voice firm. "I'm here for Lily." Sophia's smile faltered for a moment. "Lily is fine," she said, her tone turning sharp. "You've done enough. You've had your moment of rebellion. But this is the world she was born into. This is who she is." "No," Isabel shot back, her voice steady and sure. "Lily is more than just an extension of your empire. She's not a prize to be kept on a shelf. She deserves to choose her path, not follow yours." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment Sophia's perfectly controlled exterior cracked. There was a flicker of something, anger, frustration, even fear that passed through her eyes. It was a fleeting moment, but Isabel saw it clearly. The power was slipping away from Sophia. The walls she had spent a lifetime building were crumbling. Sophia leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. "You think you've won? You think you've taken something from me? But I will never let her go. Lily is mine." Isabel's pulse quickened, but she stood her ground. "No, Sophia. She's not yours. She's her own person, and I will help her find her way away from you if I have to." The turning point came the next morning. Isabel was sitting in her apartment reflecting on the events of the night before when she received a call from Lily. The voice on the other end was hesitant, unsure, but there was something in it that gave Isabel hope. Lily's voice trembled. "I need to talk." Isabel immediately stood up, her heart racing. She knew what this meant. This was the moment Lily had been waiting for. This was the moment she would step out from under her mother's control and into the world Isabel had promised her. They met in a quiet park outside of the city, a neutral ground where neither of them was bound by the constraints of power. Lily looked different today. Her posture was straighter, her eyes more determined. There was a quiet strength in her now that Isabel hadn't seen before. Lily began, her voice steady. "I've been thinking about everything you've said, about my mom, and about me." She paused, looking down at the grass beneath her feet. "I'm not sure I can be what she wants me to be anymore. I don't want to live in the cage she's built for me. I want to live for myself." Isabel's heart swelled with pride. "Lily, you don't have to be anything for anyone else. You get to decide who you are. And I'll help you, I promise." For the first time, Isabel saw Lily smile genuinely with hope and light in her eyes. The girl she had fought for, the one she had spent so many nights worrying about, was finally free. The emotional walls Sophia had built around her were starting to crumble. By the time Sophia Harrington came to realize the extent of the shift in power, it was too late. Isabel had made it clear that she was no longer a pawn in Sophia's game. She was her own person, capable of protecting Lily from the toxic world that Sophia had tried to construct. Sophia, ever the strategist, attempted one last desperate move. She reached out to Isabel, offering her a generous position at Harrington Technologies, promising more money, more influence, more power than Isabel could ever imagine. But this time, Isabel didn't bite. She saw through the offer for what it was: a last-ditch attempt to regain control over the situation. "I don't need your money, Sophia," Isabel said coldly when she received the offer. "What I need is for Lily to be free, and I won't help you take that away from her." For the first time, Sophia didn't respond with anger. She didn't respond with cold indifference. Instead, there was something in her eyes, a rare, unspoken acknowledgement of Isabel's strength. Sophia had lost, and she knew it. The power dynamic had officially shifted. Isabel was no longer the subjugated worker in Sophia Harrington's empire. She had found her voice, not just for herself, but for Lily. In doing so, she had liberated both of them from the toxic grip of the woman who had once been untouchable. Lily, though still a part of Sophia's family, had now reclaimed her own agency. She was free to explore the world outside the confines of Sophia's expectations, free to live her life as her own. Sophia, on the other hand, was left to grapple with the consequences of her actions. The empire she had built on control and fear was now crumbling piece by piece. She had lost the one thing that mattered most: her daughter's trust. In the end, Isabel had not only helped Lily find freedom, but had also discovered her own strength. The shift in power wasn't just about Sophia losing control. It was about Isabel gaining control of her own destiny, and in doing so, breaking the chains that had bound her for so long.